Well, greetings, people of the internet. Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today, you remember my home theater PC? I do, but it's not my home theater PC anymore. What is it? I'll never tell. Okay, you forced my hand. I'll tell you what it is. It's now it's a gaming computer for me, and I don't even really game that much. I mean, look, I've got an Xbox One S behind me. I've been promising video on since I bought it over a year ago, but I haven't done anything about it. So what the hell is this video all about? Well, the spouse and I were looking at each other the other day and said, you know, we've been together 30 years now, and I'm getting pretty tired of looking at you. And so we decided it was either divorce or get some new activity in our life that brought us some sort of pleasure besides looking at one another or staring blankly into the TV and hoping some repeat video program will bring us some sort of joy in life. No, I'm just kidding. We do have our garden, so we have that. No, the spouse is very into old Nintendo gaming, and I like Sega Genesis and Sega Saturn and that kind of thing. I'll even occasionally play some Atari 2600 games, but you know, growing up we were poor. Well, let's put it this way, we weren't really poor, but our parents told us we were, so we'd behave. So we couldn't afford these. In fact, the first thing I bought with my first job was an Atari 2600. That's how old I am. And it was $100. And I remember it took me 2 paychecks to save up that much money. I was just a part-timer. I didn't make much, and I had to put gas in the car and buy cigarettes because I had a horrible smoking habit. And the mall was right across the street. It was called Windsor Park Mall. And I remember the day I was trying to decide how I was going to get my paycheck cashed. I think it was only 50 or 60 bucks, and I bribed the store manager to cash in the check for me. She had enough money in the till. So she cashed it, and I rubbed my hands together with mischievous glee and ran across the street and avoided getting hit by a city bus to buy my Atari 2600. And then I proceeded to take it home, and for 3 weeks I played the hell out of it in a darkened room with curtains drawn and Coca-Cola bottles and chips everywhere, and I just had the time of my life. And then that was it. It was over. My life ended right there. No, not true. Not true. But I remember the joy that machine brought me and how hard I had to work for it. So when Nintendos and Super Nintendo and the GameCube, as young people, we couldn't afford to buy those things. They were just outside of our price range. So now that retro gaming is a thing, and it has been for years, I can pretty much play any of those games on any pretty much standard PC, including now PS3 games, PS2 games, GameCube, Nintendo, Atari 2600, the newer, the 7800, 7600, I forget. There's been so many different models and so many different game systems, including arcade games that you can play in an emulator. So the sky is pretty much the limit. Now we're focused pretty much, I'm not interested in the old Atari games. I played those as a kid. But I am interested in some of the arcade games like the Galaga, Dig Dug, Centipede, that kind of thing. And Sega Genesis, of course, because they had some really great games on there. And then the Nintendo. Not so much the early Nintendo, but Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, and GameCube. Now, we still have a Wii, and the reason we do is because Wii games are best played on the Wii because of the controllers you have. So that's what this video is about today. Now, it's not a soup to nuts tutorial video because I'm not smart enough yet to know all the ins and outs of setting it up. But what it is I'm going to show you the build process and what I ended up with, and then talk to you about some of the pitfalls you might have in your retro gaming. And then I've got some parts coming in. I'm going to build another one of these, and I'm going to do a deep dive on it. But I will share with you some of the things I ran across in this build, just so you're aware of what you might be getting into. I'm putting all these components in that Silverstone case that I originally got from my home theater PC. Now it's about a 2U in height case. The problem is it doesn't lend well to putting a video card in there because you need a really short video card. Fortunately though, for retro gaming, for emulation, I'm just going to use the internal Intel video card that's built onto that i5 4570 CPU. So I've decided to go with the H97N Wi-Fi motherboard that I got from Gigabyte a long time ago. I mean, it's been my Synology server for a while. I've done everything with this thing, even had it running as a bench unit, but I think it's a micro ATX motherboard, and it lends itself well to going into that Silverstone case. I put one of the power supplies in here, the Antec 450, and I ran across this one had a bad fan in it as well. So I don't know if I'm going to show you you've already seen me repair a fan in a power supply. It's not a big deal. You just got to be careful, don't get your fingers blown off by one of those capacitors. So I ended up having to replace the fan in this, and I've got power supplies galore laying around, but you know me, I prefer to use my old stuff and get lots of use out of it. I paired that, and I went with an internal SSD. It's only a 256 gig SSD drive, but it should be enough. And then for the controllers, I'm going to use the Xbox. I had an Xbox 360, so I had a black and a white controller laying around. I'm going to use those with the Microsoft Xbox receiver for Xbox 360. In fact, I went out and priced one of those the other day. They're up to $70. I guess they're hard to get your hands on these days. But I'm going with a couple of original Xbox 360 controllers. They now make aftermarket USB Nintendo 64 controllers. You could just remap the buttons on the Xbox 360 controllers, but I think you'll have a better experience with that, an actual Nintendo 64 controller for Nintendo 64 games. At least that's been our experience playing these games. Now the next thing you'll have to face is your choice of software. Now I'm a Windows guy, you know that. So I'm running Windows 10 Pro on this machine. And then I'm going with 3 different programs. And it's hard to explain. I'll try to simplify it. For playing the games and managing the games, I'm going to use a program called Launchbox. Not Lunchbox, Launchbox. And part of Launchbox is another program called Big Box. And basically, Launchbox is the way you manage where the games reside, the artwork, the box artwork for the games, the user manuals, and what emulator you're going to use, and some of the emulator settings on there. Big Box is basically the graphical front end, so you can set the computer to automatically boot up into Big Box and present the end user with a screen that they can run with a controller, just like you could on any other game system. Launchbox is free to use. Big Box is not free. It does require, I think they charge $20 a year and then $10 a year after that. It's like a subscription service, or you can buy it outright for like $50. So if you find that it serves your needs, then go out and buy the program by all means. They're not sponsoring this video. They're not endorsing it or anything. But I just found that under Windows to be the easiest to use. And then in addition to that, now Launchbox will supposedly do everything you need it to do without having anything else involved. However, I found it easier in my travails to use a program called RetroArch underneath to manage all of the emulators to run all the programs. And there's one reason for that. RetroArch will go out and automatically configure your game controller. So if you have your game controllers plugged in, your Xbox 360 controller, your Xbox One controllers, you could use even PS3 and PS4 controllers, I believe, or any of these controllers you get offline. You plug it in before you bring up Launchbox, and RetroArch will go out there and figure out what controller you have and configure the button mappings, because that, to be honest with you, was the hardest part of building the system, was getting the game controllers to work, which is also why I went with Xbox 360 controllers or something along the same line, because they're just easy to set up. So You go into RetroArch, and in there you load your core. They're called cores, and these are emulators. Now, keep in mind, for some gaming systems like PS1 and PS2, you'll also need what's called a ROM file, because those are used to playing games off of CD or special CD. And so you'll need a ROM file. Just do a little searching. I can't post links here, but do a little searching out on the internet for ROM files and that kind of thing. Get yourself familiar with it. And then you also need ROM files for whatever games you own. Okay, we own all these Nintendo games we're playing. So we have ROM files, are basically just a file that represents what's on the cartridge. And that gets loaded in. RetroArch takes care of setting up the emulator on that. And then Launchbox then knows RetroArch is in charge and can call whatever emulator it needs and then presents you with the game interface. And then RetroArch also maps your controller buttons so that they work and you can play the game. And it works really well. Now keep in mind, I'm at probably if there were 5 parts to setting this up and getting it done, I'm at part number 3. So right now we're testing to make sure everything's working the way we want it. And once I get done with that, then I'll be actually using Big Box, because we're not using it right now. But I wanted to first figure out how to scrape the metadata, get the box art, get the games running reliably, get the controllers working reliably. So once I get all of that done, then I'll go ahead and I'll paint the walls, if you know what I mean. So it is a bit of a learning process. That's why I'm splitting this up into 2 videos. And in the second video, when I have some more parts in here and I have another machine to set it up on, I'll share that with you, how exactly I got that set up, soup to nuts. So even though I'm using an older Intel i5 fourth generation, I think it's Haswell, or is it Sandy Bridge? Can't remember, processor with the built-in graphics, that's more than enough for to even handle Nintendo GameCube games. They're running fine. But the other thing I want this to be able to do, and here's the kicker, I want to be able to work with Steam as well. So there's some Steam games that we are both interested in, and you can configure Launchbox and Big Box so that it'll also work with your Steam account. So some of these first-person shooters or modern-day games require really a much better graphics card than I have in there. So once prices start to come down on graphics cards, if they ever do, then I'm going to be in the market for a low-profile video card to put into this unit. And then we'll be able to... Steam is probably like part 4 of adding to my Game Gear, to where I can just download those games under Steam as well and play them on this gaming system. It makes for great for rainy day entertainment, or when you're just tired of, staring at each other or the TV and there's, nothing good on to watch. We love the things we love, I think, are Mario Party, Mario Kart, Mario Golf, Mario Bowling, that kind of thing, because we're just, we're little kids still at heart. And Mario and the Nintendo games are about all these old feeble fingers can handle. It's hilarious watching me play Mario Party, or just Mario 64, just trying to jump around and get on a ledge without falling off. I think it's more humorous to watch me play it than it is to play it. So if you ever want to have a good time, I'll just turn on the surveillance camera so you can see me getting frustrated with Mario 64. So now, just so you know how I do these videos. So I do these overhead and office camera shots, and then I come back later and I import the footage and I chop it up in little bits and pieces. Here I am taking the video card out of the board cube, because that's the motherboard we're going to use. Then I come back later after I put all the clips together and applied, high speed, speed them up. Then I come back and narrate it afterwards. So that's what we're doing today. And you're probably wondering, why is this unit up on the table? Well, the reason is I thought I was going to use this power supply for the home theater system. And so I took it out. This is an old, I forgot the name brand, Super Micro 8X Sil-F that I was using as a server for a while, but it's It's an older unit with a Xeon processor. So I thought I'd rob the power supply out of there. And this is the Silverstone case that I got a year ago for the home theater PC. So this is what we're going to be using today. So I opened it up. And I knew this case had been damaged in shipping, but I didn't realize how bad it had been because I just went ahead and built around it. So there I got myself a cup of coffee, and then I'm looking to see how bad this thing is actually bent in the middle. But deciding to go on with it anyway, as I often do, because you got to work with what you got. So there's that Thermaltake Smart 500 watt power supply. But I ran into a problem with using this power supply, and I ended up changing it here in a minute. And that is one of the, additional power rails on it. I got to looking at it and thinking, if I want to expand this thing later with a high-powered video card, I would not have the power connections to do that with enough. Not with that Thermaltake. And that, and the fact that I knew I would probably need longer cables in one of these other cases. So you'll see me change that out. But what I'm working on right now is a little riser stand that the SSD drive goes on. You have to mount it first and then, for whatever reason, then mount it inside the case. And it's kind of hard to get to. And I didn't have a small magnetic screwdriver, so there I'm magnetizing my little screwdriver so I can get in there. And do pardon my head in these shots. And then I'm taking off the stabilizer bar so I can get an idea of how tiny that little mini ITX motherboard is. I love that board. That board has been just about everything at Uncle Joe's Playhouse. And now it's being put to good use as a retro gaming machine. As you can see, it does have a PCI Express slot, but only one, and I'm going to have to get a low profile card. So when I was looking at these power connectors, and I was going, wow, this is really kind of overkill for this system, and I got to laying stuff out, and then I got to thinking. And the other problem was one of these connectors wouldn't work. They're designed for the add-on video cards, and the one that I've got is actually a 6-pin and not a 4-pin, and it won't fit in there. So that's when I got to thinking, the wheels got to turn into my head, and the steam started to come out of my ears. And I decided, yeah, let's use a different power supply. So you're going to see me change that out here in a moment. Now, why a retro gaming machine? Well, because I want to. We like the retro games, and it's a way for us to spend time together. So now the power supply I've decided to go with is in this board case, and this is the other Antec 450 watt power supply that I did a fan repair video on. Well, I did a repair video on. So when you see me repairing that one power supply, it was actually two of them that needed a fan. And so I just thought that Antec power supply was better suited to go into this case for the purpose I needed it for. And so there I am mounting it. Oh, fun, fun, fun. What did I want to say? Yeah, so anyway, back on why retro gaming. Well, one, I love building PCs, and two, we do have a Raspberry Pi that's running RetroPie, but it's just not powerful enough for the Nintendo 64 games and ROMs. And so I decided to go ahead and do a PC, because the other thing I want to be able to do with this at some point is play Steam games on it. And you need Windows to do that. And then I also want to play around in the future with Kodi, because I'm kind of getting tired of Plex. We got the TiVo now for our live TV, and I'm still preferring MB to Plex. But for streaming our movies and whatnot, I would rather play them directly than stream them. There just seems to be a lot less trouble. And I'm not opposed to building, I built this one for the living room, but I'm not opposed to building one of these for our bedroom and using that as, for playing our internal video and Netflix and Hulu. I mean, it can all play on a PC, with one interface to rule them all, so to speak. Now, I'm slowing this down here, so when I lift this case, you can see how bad, look at the dip. And then I'll pause it, and you can see how bad the dip is in that case. So, now I'm doing a little cable management here, which is basically just tying them up and setting them aside. And then I'm putting the internal brace back in. And then I'm going to plug it in and make sure everything comes up. So the onboard video is just running off the Intel, I think it's an i5 4770 processor. That's really more than enough for emulation for what I do. Now later, with some of the Steam games, we'll want another video card in there, a low profile video card. But, this internal video card is pretty darn powerful, all things considered. So, now the next thing to do is get Windows loaded on here, which is what I'm doing. And I'm going to use Windows 10 Pro. And then what I'll do in the next video, we're not going to go and do a deep dive. This is really a build video. Show you how I built it. In the next video, we'll start going into the configuration process for the 3 programs I use: Launchbox, Big Box, and RetroArch. And then as I learn Kodi, we'll add Kodi to that mix. But so basically, you're just gonna, all I'm doing is installing Windows 10 Pro, and I'm using that. I could have used Home. You could use Home. Should be fine. And I'm not actually gonna join this computer to the domain. It's just gonna be like a standalone computer, but that has login access to the media share, which is Drive M. And maybe the applications. Now the next thing I'm doing is cleaning up my wireless controllers, and Maddie May is supervising to make sure I do it right. So basically, you can see up there I've got Launchbox running with some titles, and I decided to take some Windex on a rag and clean those controllers up really well. They've been in storage or just sitting on their own for quite a while. So this is probably the first good cleaning they've had since we bought them. But there you go. The system is built and it's installed, and we're getting the kinks worked out of it, and there'll be videos to follow. So I'd like to dedicate this part of the video and the next video that I do on it to Willie Howe, because he did ask in his live stream if I would do a deeper dive video on game emulation. Because I think, he's had a kid grow up long enough to graduate high school. So I think Willie's starting to feel a little old now. And maybe some of these slower games are more to his liking. Just kidding, Willie. But it's fun. It's fun to do it. And that's what part of this channel is about. You never know from week to week what subject I'm going to cover next. Next week I could be gardening or painting the house or working at the pool. But that's why it's called Unky Joe's Playhouse and not your Playhouse. Because I get to decide what I do here. And I love old emulation gaming, and I love building these old PCs and making them do new stuff. So hopefully if you're new to the channel, this won't scare you off. I don't just do enterprise level videos. That's not what this channel is about. But anyway, we hope you found this video entertaining and informative. As always, please give us a thumbs up down below if you liked it. Leave your comments down in the comment section. What do you think? Are you into retro gaming? Some good places where I can get some more ROMs? No, I got all the ROMs I'll ever need. Donate if you're so inclined. PayPal, Patreon, and the YouTube join function helps keep the lights on here at Unky Joe's Playhouse. And if you're not already a subscriber, please subscribe. We're trying to reach 10,000 subscribers by the 4th of July. That'll be my 4th of July present. Hopefully we can do it. So even if you don't like the channel, just subscribe so I can shut up about it, okay? Hit the notification bell to be notified when we have new videos come out. Please come back and see us again, and don't forget, we'll see you on the other side.